Mr. Caro, I loved the book Working. I love the book Working, and I'll tell you why. I have read all of your work, and I'm a huge fan. And I knew that you were thorough as a researcher and a writer, but I had no idea until I read this book that you were that, I could use so many words, dedicated, compulsive, committed. You have a phrase that you were taught very early, and I'd like you to talk about it a little bit here at the top. A man, I think it was Alan Hathaway at Newsday, one of your first jobs, told you when you're doing research, turn every page.
Right.
Turn every page. You took it literally, and I think you've taken it further than any biographer in the history of the written word. Tell us about that.
Well, I was a young reporter at Newsday, still doing very short stories, and through an accident, I got thrown into an investigative, had to go down and go through a bunch of files at a federal agency, and I came back and wrote a memo for the real reporters who would write the story the next day. And we had a managing editor, Alan Hathaway, who was an old guy from the 1920s. He was a guy with a big head, with just a fringe of hair around the back. The head was very red because he started drinking very early in the day. We never knew that whether Alan graduated from college or even went to college, but he really had a prejudice against people from prestigious universities. I went to Princeton, and they hired me while he was on vacation as a joke on him. So he would walk by my desk every day on the way to his office, and he'd never talk to me. And I'd say, "Good morning, Mr. Hathaway," or "Hi, Alan," or whatever. He'd never even answer me. So this one day I had to go down because everyone else was actually on a picnic and no one could be reached because they didn't have cell phones. And I wrote a long memo. And the next morning, very early, his secretary called me and said, "Alan wants to see you right away." And I said to Ina, "You see, I was right not to move. I'm about to be fired." And all the way into the office, I was sure I was going to be fired. I got to and his secretary, June Blum, said to me, "Go in." So I walked across. He had a glass-enclosed office, and I could see this big red head bent over reading something very intently. And as I got to his door, I saw it was my memo that he was reading. And he waved me to a chair, and after a while, he looked up and he said, "I didn't know someone from Princeton could go through files like this. From now on, you do investigative work." Well, I have great savoir-faire at moments like this, and what I said to him was, "But I don't know anything about investigative work." And he looked up at me for what I remember as a very long time and said, "Just remember one thing. Turn every page. Never assume anything. Turn every goddamn page." And I can't tell you how many times in my life that stuck with me and really resulted in me finding something.